Hey guys, it's Ben the Coin Geek at Old Pueblo Coin, and thanks today for joining us for a very interesting and broad-ranging conversation with John Feigenbaum, the owner of CDN Publishing. They do the Greysheet. They do now they do the Red Book because now they have bought Whitman, and so there's a lot going on in this conversation. I do want you to listen to this conversation instead of watch it, partially because of the length, but also because there are parts where the audio and video don't line up, and that makes it very hard to stay with the conversation. But also, there are a few spots, just so you know, where the audio got a little skewed, unfortunately, with some technical difficulties. But pretty much anywhere where you get that little audio skip, you can still understand the gist of the conversation. And we didn't want to lose this content because of those little audio technical difficulties. And so, at the end of the day, enjoy, go do something with your hands while you listen to this. Thanks for not watching. I'm Ben the Coin Geek. You can leave your comments down below, and John and I are probably going to shoot another video sometime where we respond to the comments on this video. So take it away. All right, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. I'm with John Feigenbaum of the CDN. And how many titles do you have, John?
Well, now it's Whitman Brands. So we have elevated the company to Whitman Brands, which is now the parent company for CDN Publishing and Whitman Publishing. And so I'm still, that's the single title of CEO and maybe president.
So that leads into something that I definitely wanted to talk to you about, which is, so you guys bought Whitman. So, but then you're keeping Whitman as like the parent title company, and then CDN is going to be under Whitman. And this is all, figuring out some of the details, but
Right, right. No, actually, and interestingly, this is the first interview I've actually done along those lines. So it's actually an opportunity to discuss it, the mindset. But really, there is not a hierarchy. What we did was we have this wonderful brand of CDN Publishing, Greysheet. CDN Publishing is not so well known as a brand. Greysheet certainly is, but Greysheet, to my mind, is a specific product or wholesale value set. So that was problematic. Then we had the good fortune of working with our friends at Whitman and making an acquisition, which was just really exciting. And now this is a company, of course, that's the parent company of the Red Book, the United States Guidebook, and other books like wonderful, brands like 100 Greatest or Cherry Picker's Guide, things like that. These are sort of different brands. So what happened is when you merge these two or combine these two companies, let's say, I felt the need in the short, so I could explain to people like on this podcast or anywhere in the world, how do I tell you what the company is? We chose the Whitman brand as the better brand name. So we called it Whitman Brands, almost like Kraft Foods or something like that. And we could also register that domain, so that was important. We thought about Whitman Group or something like that.
yeah.
Whitman is now the overarching name, but the companies themselves neither takes up precedence or over the other one. There's a great team over at Whitman, and there's a wonderful team, obviously, here at Greysheet or CDN. And the challenge be in the next year or two is how do we leverage both of these companies to get something, to the most out of both of them for the same, benefit that we've always wanted, which was to inform the collecting public and dealers and consistent with messaging and pricing and things like that.
So was Whitman for sale, or did you approach them and say, "Hey, I know you," because I know you've done other book things. Like I realize because I'm on your mailing list that you say, "Hey, we have the rights to these books. Buy these books from us." So I'm assuming there is some relationship there that's somewhat long-standing. Was Whitman just for sale, or I don't know how this works.
Whitman was I don't think was ever offered for sale. I had a really great relationship with Charles Anderson, who was the scion of the Anderson family that owns a lot of things down in Alabama. They're just a wonderful family, and they own incredible properties, including the family controls that chain of bookstores. They've got a legacy of coin collecting, and so I've known known the Andersons for quite a while, and I would see Mary Burleson, who was the president of Whitman, still is the president of Whitman at the Baltimore Expo. So I would see her and say, Mary, look, I mean, one of these days, maybe if it ever an option, let me know. And she kept rebuffing me, very polite in a certain way. And then one day she said, maybe Charles would be interested in talking to you. And that began a long process of, and I really had to prove myself. And I feel the need to prove myself every day now is that I'm going to take really good care of this brand, of this company. Because, you know,
So this is the same Whitman, right?
correct.
Same
Albums
company.
and folders, all the tubes, and on the tubes, I think you'll see something like Anco, which is short for Anderson Company. So this Anderson family is much more involved than anyone realizes, sort of in the numismatic community, or has been. And so there's a generational change over there. They needed to, and they liked what I've been doing. And I think that's a very important aspect, is that they really, Charles told me, he said he's very impressed and happy with what we're doing here at Greysheet. And that therefore, he felt we were the only company that he would talk to, is what he told me.
Well, I mean, there's not, how would I put this? I don't think that there's a whole lot. I'm trying to think of where else you would go. I mean, it just makes sense in lots of ways. It seems like a pretty natural merger because you guys are already in the same market space, so to speak, on a lot of different levels. But so then, does Whitman still produce a lot of the supply products?
Yeah. So now I am in this business and trying to learn that. But everything from we're designing things. I'm learning every day. We're designing little clamshell sort of plastic holders where you put the Kennedy half dollar, or something like that to give away as a birth year present, or everything, and real literature. And interestingly enough, there's titles that they produce, that Whitman has produced, that are related to NCAA sports or NCAA schools, history. So it's actually a quite far-reaching company in a world that is largely turning away from print publishing. We are embracing it. I still feel that it's a really strong place for print publishing, and the albums that you're showing me, it's a Slack world, and yet albums and folders are the entry point for collectors. So it's a big deal, and we're there to foster that, because the alternate, I know you have a question, but the alternate path for a company like that is private equity, right? In this day and age of private equity, you have a company and it makes X every year at the bottom line. So you turn to a private equity group and you say, how much will you pay? Well, we'll pay 6 times earnings, and then we'll buy it, and we'll fire all the people, or fire half the people, and we'll make 3 times the profit. And then in 4 years, there'll be nothing left, but we'll have made 22% return on investment for our investors, and everybody's happy, and there's nothing left but skin and bones. This is the story of the local newspaper business in the country.
I can visualize for you what I think of private equity. It's like, way to kill
Right.
your baby, right? Like,
Well,
I
it's right. And Charles did not
listen,
want to do that.
I have to say it. I'll say it out loud because I've said it out plenty of times. I think it's bad for the industry what's happened with private equity taking things over. There's plenty of coin people still in those businesses, but also they're not run necessarily. At the end of the day, they're not run by coin people. They're run by, pencil pushers, and the same thing corporate America does. Anyway, I have a big.
Right, that's a slightly different conversation.
I have a
if you're
big
referring
soapbox that I won't get on, but your points are well taken here,
yeah.
personally. So the funny thing is, I'm listening to this, and you're talking about Whitman and CDN, and like I understand the brand issue because for me, I've been at Old Pueblo Coin for 26 years, but the Coin Geek brand is relatively new within the last 3 years. But at the same time, it's like it's up here compared to what Old Pueblo Coin is down here. And so I am, as I think about the future, trying to understand what does the Coin Geek brand mean, and where does it fit in the overall coin ecosystem, and how does that relate to Old Pueblo Coin? And if I want to do other projects in the future, and oh, by the way, now I have a coin show, the Tucson Coin Show that I do,
Hmm.
and where do these things actually meet? And it's really, people don't necessarily think about it, but you have to consider how the consumer views the product, how the consumer views what you already have. And so it's this weird amalgamation of things when you're trying to present something to other people to say, hey, we're still this brand that you love.
Right.
Also, we have this offering over here. And there's a lot that goes into that. I don't think people always see that.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's exactly, those kinds of questions are what I'm facing every day. And, and I still, sit here at my, I just long for, and as much as I'm excited, and you'll hear that through this conversation, how excited I am about all these avenues that are now open to us, because the Greysheet brand was limited and skinny, and the Whitman brand is wide and possibilities. But I just really miss a lot of days just doing the good old pricing of coins and focusing on things, and that's where my heart still is. So it's I don't want to spend every day thinking about return on equity and things like that, and then, so that's the beauty of this, and that's why the Anderson family trusted us with this role of loving numismatics first, and and working on how can we combine brands in such a way. I'll just a quick example of how they combine perfectly, and I don't even know that anybody realized this, except for maybe Patrick and I. But when we talk about where is the crossover between Whitman and Greysheet or CDN, we are building out a catalog, a digital catalog of every coin, every piece of paper money in the world that we can, and that is really the underlying project of the company, because from this skeleton catalog, and so you can't price a 1909 SVDB penny unless it's in the catalog, unless there's somewhere to put the value, how to that out in the Greysheet or on the website. You can always embellish it with more information as to detail, strike and counterfeit information. Anything you want to add, it still has to have the item in the catalog. So if there are, we started helping CAC grading by licensing them our catalog. So CAC grading are the first company to use our catalog index numbering system, and we call it the Greysheet ID, the GSID. Since the last time we spoke, this is kind of a new development. Every CAC coin has our number on the front of the label. That is really awesome for us, and very helpful to them, because without that, they would have to build that catalog from scratch and would have changed the dynamic of their growth rate. So by doing so, they have been pushing us in the last 6 months, driving me crazy. We need all the Overtons added. We need dice dates of Overtons added. We need the VAMs, and there's a new VAM this week, and there's such and such. And I've been kind of going back and forth with John Butler over there about, like, hey, are you killing me? But now we come along doing the Cherry Picker Guide 3. As my work next week, is helping the next Cherry Picker Guide number 3 to press, and they need pricing, because pricing is hard for most companies. But when we talk about the difficulty, even at the Red Book, they've had a difficulty with getting pricing at the last minute. How do you call dealers and say what are vehicles worth now, and so on? It's like all this. It's what we do all day. So we can give you pricing at the Red Book, and that saves a lot of work, and it makes our brand cross over. And it's the same for the Cherry Picker. We are now adding all the varieties ahead of the publication to this database, so that that the moment that book comes off the press, every variety book will be in our website and so on. But by pricing those varieties ahead of time, we can get them in the book, get the catalog numbers in the book, and then also the pricing is now, people, I think, a real world, a much better pricing set than they ever had in the past with these Cherry Picker guides. And a Cherry Picker guide couldn't keep up with the fact that Morgan tripled in value over the last 2 years. They're still, that's not the nature of that, of the people who write a book like that, is not to keep up with 82 Morgans and 65. So when they're doing a van variety of that coin, it's it has to be worth more than the base, as we say, the base value, but it can really be in that all that the same way Greysheet would be. So that's the beauty of the crossover in this particular sense.
Yeah. Well, I'm just thinking about how difficult it is in general, and that's one of the questions I get a lot is just on coin pricing. And it's really funny because I ask people about what kind of questions they might have about the gray sheet, and that's always the question is like, how do you get prices for stuff? And so it's pretty simple, right? You just make it up. I'm
Well,
being facetious.
no, no, it is, but it is pretty simple. But we don't make it up,
I
right?
know, I know.
What we do largely is on coins that say over $250 or of some value set that trade regularly at auction. That's our starting point from a level of value, and then what we do is we react. So, for example, the market is definitely going to decline at the moment. There's a pricing adjustment in the market. So the first thing that I'll do in a given week, or like yesterday in the afternoon, I finally had some time to do this, and I'll look at the auction data from the last 2 weeks and compare that sheet. I have reports, and actually dealers on CDN Exchange have access to the exact same report, and it'll say, I don't know, 1887 Liberty Proof 65 DCAM is one just sold at Heritage for, I don't know, I'm making up things, $5,000, but the gray sheet was $7,000. So that's a new price point. That's not making it up. That's the new, to me, that's the new number. The new number is what the market in a public forum priced that at. And I give the benefit of the doubt, because you could argue maybe it should be less if it's maybe a collector bought it and maybe a dealer bought it. We give the benefit of the doubt that, okay, all in with price, the pricing and buyer's fee, that's the new sheet. If I see, pricing on CDN Exchange, people put asks, and so people ask below bid levels, that obviously affects pricing. Spot metals affect pricing every day, and spot metals are much higher than they were when you look at it a year ago or 2 years ago. If gold is holding over 2,000, we take because it's been there for a whole month or something, but this is a big deal, and we have, I think we're the only company that tracks these kinds of values and have formulas that are paying attention to spot pricing every single day. So when silver changes, so do the values of coins that are intrinsically valued on silver, right? And that's tens of thousands of items and hundreds of thousands of prices.
Yeah. Yeah, it's good to have the automation. I'm sure that helps quite a bit compared to the past. I was going to ask you about the difference between things that are traded very regularly versus something that's more of an auction coin. And at what level, sometimes if you look in one of your pricing guides, you'll just see the dash marks instead of a given price. And usually that's just from a lack of data, as I understand it. And at what point does a coin trade, in your opinion, infrequently enough to where you're not going to put a price on it? You're just going to say, you know what? Because the last auction price, if there's one auction in 6 years, that's not going to be indicative
Well,
of the market value?
it actually informs me, and it's the best I can do. The
Sure.
esoteric world of numismatics, even the most common coins are still tremendously different than, let's say, housing prices in your neighborhood, where just much the price, what I call price discovery, easier. So, but what I would say is I'm working on, in anticipation of doing a guide for patterns, that this is the most esoteric, one of the most esoteric regions in American numismatics is pattern coinage. So I go through auction data again. I just go through the same console that anybody has access to if they join exchange, and I can say Judd 222, Judd 223, and I just say, okay, if I have one auction point and it's 2014, at least it's an auction point, right? And it's $4,000, and I have no other data. I'll start at 1,000, right? I'll just say, okay, that's the last known trade for that item. I'll put it in at 4,000. I don't believe that patterns, and I haven't enough experience pricing patterns for the last 3 months and working on this project to know that the market hasn't shifted significantly across the board in patterns. It's, it's, he says, okay, it sold for 4,000 and 24. I want 8,000 for mine, and you're the only, and you have to have it. Well, you're gonna, I guess you might pay it. I don't know. So I will put the price guide at 4,000 because I don't have a live data point other than that. But we have somewhere, and then oftentimes what will happen is a new coin will come up. I've only got one price, anything else, like you say. This happens in Pioneer Gold a lot, where there's infrequent trades on esoteric items. So we'll be at an XF be $20,000. Then an XF45 sells for 16,000. Or this also happens in colonial coins. Okay, well, if the new price point is 16,000 for a 45, I have to drop XF40 below that number. So I'll make it 14,000 or 14.5, something like that.
Right. And that's what I try to do. I try to educate people because they ask me how to price some of this stuff, and I often say you've got to do some of your own research,
Hmm.
and you also need to be able to understand, when something trades really infrequently. It's a starting point. It is a point that can help you understand, but also look and see, can you find something else in the open market? What is someone else pricing something at? And for collectors, a lot of them aren't used to. They're used to seeing something that trades very regularly, but as they go through their collecting journey, if they get into something that's either more esoteric or more rare, they really need a guide to help them understand, like, there's a lot of nuance here. It's not just black and white. And sometimes you're the market maker when you're the consumer and you're buying something.
Listen, if you said to me right now, I'm looking at the gray sheet and you've got 1980 proof sets at $4 and I'm paying 450 all day long. You and I have a trusted relationship. Okay, the bid is now 450. Or if you want to corner the market on 1986 proof sets and make them $20 and say I'll buy every single one, that is how this collectibles market works. I mean, it works in such
Right.
a way that it is, if you make items liquid and for sellers and you become known as the buyer for such a thing, then it's very relevant, and that's how it's a very thin market, and then you disappear is a problem. And that happens to me all the time. So I'm constantly hearing from people who say, you have York commemoratives in 65 and I'm paying $20 more than you're saying. And then so we raise it $20, and then 2 months later their program is $20 too high. And there's a very big concern for us. So people know my relationship with this business and this industry and the people. And I think I try to dissuade from people from this kind of manipulation. If you're there, I want to know you're there for the long haul. I don't want to move things around and hurt and get buyers hurt. I don't want dealers to get hurt. We start with a gray sheet, which is the wholesale guide. So when you open up your gray sheet at the counter and a guy walks in with a box of proof sets, or that you know where things are. I want you to feel that confidence. And so this is the value I think that we can add. Going back to the Whitman conversation and the publications that we do at Whitman, is that gray sheet can bring the confidence of valuation, and Whitman can bring the confidence of information.
Yeah.
And,
So
and
how international is your company?
Not terribly. We would like to be more international. So I just got back from Berlin, where I was there for the biggest coin show of the year. In my mind, certainly the biggest trade show of the year in numismatics is in Berlin every year. We are getting known. People definitely know the Whitman brand better than the CDN or Greysheet brand, because those are kind of centric pricing guides. So Whitman known. People know that blue folder. They know the red book. We had a sample book on our booth floor, and we didn't have a case of them or anything. We just had one sample red book. I had 200 people walk by wanting to buy it. So it's a very rare item, unfortunately, in Europe. So we to bring our brand, and I see the possibility of having, the red book of German coins or the red book of Finnish coins, or we can use this kind of branding to. Sooner than that, I would rather have the red book of Mexican and Canadian coins, but you see what I'm saying? This kind of straight, no nonsense price.
Yeah, as far as market discovery goes, I mean, I'm with you. I had a couple conversations last summer with some kids that are, they're young collectors and they're from Europe. And it's very interesting talking to them about just how different the market is over there. And in some ways, the market is like the 1960s market was here. I mean, it's really interesting to see, in my mind, I just don't think about it that way,
Right.
but I think that there's a larger collector base in America for American coins than, to your point, in Finland for Finnish coins. There's fewer collectors per capita kind of thing. I don't have an actual metric, but it just kind of, I get that sense. Is that, do you feel the same, or do you think I'm off base on that
No, I mean, I can't speak about it, but I can speak about. I think
in
the
general?
German collector base is actually a the most robust of all. I've been told that. So German and British coins would be the best collector bases in Europe, other than, let's say, France or Switzerland. Both countries, by the way, France and Switzerland, really logical collector sets of coins. These long series of 25-cent and 50-cent denominated coins. We have walkers and quarters, and you could collect Swiss coins the same way, and you could say the 1 year 1921 as a key date and blah blah blah, and they're just not as I don't know, maybe the Whitman folders don't really exist for those coins, so people really never got into that generational bug. But you and I spoke in the last conversation stamp business. I was listening to our old conversation. We talked a lot about why the stamp business kind of wilted. It decided in that call that it was about the lack of price guides. And in the Europe market, it could also be a similar thing where they don't have great price guides. They do, Germany has great price guides, no question. So the folders, but I think Europe could spark in terms of collecting. I think Europeans are more old school than Americans in terms of like touching things and having tactile hobbies, as opposed to just being on their phones all the time. And I mean, I think it's ripe. But what's happening in Europe that's dramatic and better than the U.S. is these large companies, and I call them marketing companies. They're large companies that are sort of like AppMex on steroids, where they are finding large bases of customers who are interested in buying coins, but what they're doing is they're focusing on modern issues. They're not focusing so much on classic coins, because classic coins are hard. You and I know that, right? I mean, if you want to put together a set of vehicles, you're going to have to explain to somebody about the grading, about works, and prices of different grades, and maybe you should get certified. Whereas if I sell you all the new modern mint issues from from the Monnaie de Paris or the German mint or whatever, it's beautifully packaged. Everything's like lovely, or even if you buy kookaburras or something like that from Australia, it's an easier sell. That's what they're working on, and they've made some mega companies have emerged that quite well, clearly, from this show. So they've taken a different path. They've taken the path of, let's say, selling. I call it like selling condos versus selling existing homes. Right? It's easier to build a whole new neighborhood, put a big branding around all the homes in that neighborhood, and sell them, and put a lot of marketing into that, than it is to sell classic US. So a company like Littleton, with all the massive effort it takes for Lincoln from 1909 to present, it's a lot more work, as you know. This is what's happening in Europe. Is they've gone in that direction of beautiful. I mean, if you look around, some of the coins being is staggering in terms of the technical complexity and beauty, and they're crossing over into licensing. What you're seeing is Star Wars coins or guitar-shaped coins from Fiji or something like that, and they're amazing. And the only way you're going to get new people who could care less about coins buy coins is if they love Star Wars or Simpsons or whatever. So all of this is happening at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. Just, I use the term ecosystem, just talking about the coin world, because there's so many different things that go on there. And, uh, I think one of my calls to action, so to speak, with the older generations or people who've been collecting, they don't have to be old, but if you're in your 40s and have been collecting for 25 years, you're old in the industry, right? So, um, is to not judge what other people collect, because the reality is you're going to end up over time having all kinds of cross pollination. There comes a point in time when people get introduced to these modern efforts, and you know what? They end up saying, "Oh, what's that?" at a coin show or something else, and they see something older and it piques their interest. There's so many rabbit trails and rabbit holes any collector can get into. But, what you need to make sure you have as an industry is open doors. And
Mhm.
whatever that open door is, I tell people all the time, stacking silver is an open door. It's a gateway drug. Yeah, I mean, it gets people in the door. And so don't make fun of it. Like, you don't have to collect the stuff, the modern license stuff, but I got collectors now that buy ancient coins that all they knew was silver rounds.
Sure.
Or they started with a newy, Star Wars coin, and that's pretty good stuff. So,
Yeah, I mean, whatever it is that gets people into our hobby is extremely relevant. And right, you would probably not survive if we had to sell V nickels and VF buffaloes and things like that. That's a big enough world for us to grow and have YouTube channels, or we need this. And and it's great. I mean, I think the US Mint is really the biggest seller of coins in the United States, I would suspect. And hopefully they are, and hopefully they're taking notice. And I know we've got some exciting events coming on the calendar for us. I don't know if you're aware. I learned this as a sort of Whitman, exec. Somebody said, "Well, you have to know, John, 6 is now the 250 anniversary. So instead of the bicentennial, it's and God forgive me, but I don't remember what we call the 255th. It's like the quadruple centennial, bicentennial, ever. But the U.S. Mint gets a mandate. So the U.S. Mint has um, rules and guidelines. You know what government red tape looks like. You watch TV. It's impossible for the U.S. Mint to points on a certain day. They can't just wake up 2025 and say we don't like the Lincoln cent anymore. We're gonna somebody else on the Lincoln cent. They can't. They have to go through all kinds of literal acts of Congress and so on. But for these bicentennial situations, they get 1 year mandates. So then 2026, we're going to get a 1 year set of coins, just like in 1976. So that's really cool. Like, I mean, I was like, oh gosh, we got to make certain folders for that. We got to be ready. Um, and they're doing something new with statehood quarters. Like they're going to shift over the quarter program at that time. After that, I believe, and do something sports themed. So things like that are on the horizon. So the U.S. Mint is a very important part of this ecosystem that we're describing here in the U.S. Anyway.
have you ever thought about being on one of those, uh, trying to be on one of those, what do they call it? The U.S. the people who are involved in making the new coinage, they have a special committee you can get on. There's applications. You
CAC.
familiar with this? Have you ever felt like I can do that, or have you always thought like you're an idiot if you think you can do that?
No, I mean, I think we're referring to something called I think it's the CCAC, the Citizens
Yes.
Advisory Council. And I don't know why the extra C is. I am generally not a committee person, and I say this, I'm the executive director at the PNG at the moment, and I'm enjoying that role because I can control the meetings, you know, but I am not generally someone who wants to be on bureaucratic meetings. And I just don't know that I can make a difference. And I hope they're always, anyone on those committees, and I work with at least two people now who are on that committee, and they're wonderful people, and God bless them for the efforts that they put into the tireless hours and travel to have a meeting that may or may not develop something. But I can promise you that it does matter. For example, the 2021 Morgan, and peace dollars, result of the CCAC team coming up with that idea and saying, "Hey, these Morgan dollars were really cool. You stopped making them in 1921, and they'd be great sellers if we made them again." It takes that knowledge of the hobby to have that, to get that done. And they're doing something with, I think, $1794. They're going to reissue that. And again, things I've learned that about the frustration, they cannot make that into a silver coin because of legislation. It has to be legislated. The gold coins, the U.S. Mint can make gold coins. If you ever wonder why the U.S. Mint will come out, and I think this, you see it in this year, where they'll come out with a gold coin with a denominated $5, $10, but the silver coin is a metal, and wonder why didn't they just make a commemorative silver? Because in the legislation of the U.S. Mint, they have to go to Congress to issue a denominated silver coin, but they don't have to go to Congress for a denominated gold coin.
That's wild. Yeah,
Yeah,
we've got
that's
a lot
one of committees.
Yeah, no, I
believe in
well, I'll
fighting.
have, right. I mean, I'll have people ask me about, because they'll be like, oh, you'd be good on one of those committees, and it's really funny because I've been on lots of committees for things in the past, and I'm with you. Like, the concept is cool. Like, you feel like I could influence this. This would be fun, but also committees are, I mean, just you may as well join your homeowners association board, and
That's right. I mean,
I
it's
mean,
it's
like, you'll have less frustration. At least you can walk home, right? Like,
well, Dennis Tucker was the publisher here at Whitman, and he's actually retiring at the end of the month. But he loves that committee. He's very instrumental and passionate, and speaks. To be honest with you, I can talk all day about pricing, but I really don't know squat about the history of a lot of things. And just that's just my. I'm not strong there. I'm not strong in why they made vehicles or things like that. And I think if you're in a committee like that, that's where they need you to be strong. So they're thinking about the 21. Why are the Morgan dollars worth reissuing? And I can say, well, I know what they trade for. I can't tell you why it's a good idea that we should we make those.
I think
So
I think the concept of generally coin collectors understanding how to make coins or coin designs, it's kind of like saying that I watch the NFL, so I should know how to coach a team or ref. Yeah, it's
exactly.
like, nah, not really. Like, I'm a more of a sideline kind of guy when it comes to that. Like, I know what I like when I see it, but I could never really design. You know, I
But
no.
but I'll say this. I mean, we have this new generation, of course, of influencers, of which I consider you an influencer, and this influencer world matters quite a bit when it comes down to what the U.S. should be listening to, because people like yourselves needs. I would hope that the U.S. Mint is paying attention and says, Ben needs to be on board with this kind of idea. He's his opinion matters and is listened to, and that's this is we still have this kind of vibe in the world, in the business world, where you have the kind of the old school is still alive and just waning off of traditional marketing methods, and the new school of social media influence or things like that. And there's still kind of in the fuzzy middle, and the U.S. Mint, I think, is sort of not they want to. Or Ventress Gibson, the Mint director, I think she's very forward thinking and paying attention to a lot of social issues and things like that, and that's the direction that the U.S. Mint is going. So hopefully they will listen, and someone like you in a better world would be invited to be on a committee like that, right? They would say you matter. Um, and I don't know how it works, and I don't get that's the other thing. I don't have any real idea of it.
Lots of meetings, undoubtedly. Well, the funny thing is, I actually met one of the guys who helped produce or helped create. He's a paper scientist. He helped create the new $100 bills that we have.
Right.
Created a decade ago when it finally came out. In the commentary of the behind the scenes stuff, is the stuff that would drive you and I nuts, which is like, he's like, you got to understand, I'm within the confines of what I can do based on all these committees that control us workers creating things. And so I kind of have a feeling that I would feel like I'm a little bit in a box. But I'll tell you one idea. If anyone's listening out there, commemorative currency, come on. That's where I know you and I are coin guys, but you like stamps. I like paper money. Like nothing's better. The stuff that you can do with paper is insane.
Right.
I mean, beautiful. Go for it. Go for
Right.
it. I mean, I'm all about that. But
It's interesting, and that's never come up. I don't know. I don't know. That's the Bureau of Engraving and Printing. That's sort of a quasi. It's under the Treasury. I think the Mint has any control over that. So that's a whole different channel and a whole different set of politics. Like Mickey Mouse money or something, or anything to generate interest, because nobody. I mean, who in the United States is using paper money anyway? So it's
see,
collectible.
but here's the hard part. I mean, and that's a whole nother conversation, is like the coins in general. I've been telling people, get them out in front of people.
Right.
I mean, kids, when are kids going to see coins?
Not
So,
in my.
well, but I'm telling you, like, so, I've got my own plans I'm working on, and I have new target goals. I'm just doing stuff different. I'm going after a different crowd. I mean, I'm, well, like you said, we're in the fuzzy middle, right? I mean, there's all the old school stuff. There's wherever we're meeting right now with this new stuff, and then there's stuff that's off here in the future that I'm thinking about, which is completely different. That I'm going to try to tackle some other world problems, but coin related world problems, mind you, because I actually
Exactly.
have some influence in that, I guess. So,
Yeah,
um,
for
so
sure.
now Whitman owns the Baltimore show. Is that how that works?
Correct. Correct. I am the proud owner of
Like
the Whitman
you're
Expo.
not busy enough. Come
You know,
on.
there's still the same amount of hours in the day, and I'm definitely busier than I was. But there's Lori Croft is the show manager at Whitman Expos, and she's fantastic. So really, all I do is I'm just talking to her and giving my 2 cents, but really staying out of her way because she does such a fantastic job. So yeah, and since you have a Tucson show, how incredibly difficult it is to run a coin show. So
You just hang out a sign. What are you talking about?
right, right, security's no issue.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Marketing.
what now? Does Whitman do they have other shows or just the Baltimore one?
We have 3 shows a year in Baltimore. That's
Okay.
it. Yeah, there's always a possibility of more if you're suggesting one, but we're open to anything.
Yeah.
But that's been a tradition for going on, I don't know, 40 years or something. I mean, I grew up at a show in Lanham, Maryland, which is kind of the 12 o'clock at the Beltway of Washington D.C. It was literally underneath a parking deck. That's that. We all have those stories, right? When it's rainy day, it was but that's where almost all of us in the Mid Atlantic, whether it's from New York to North Carolina, we've known each other. This group of dealers have known each other since we were kids because we would show up. But that was the show. And that show eventually became the Whitman Expo.
Nice.
So that's
Nice. Very,
kind of
very
rich
cool
history.
history. I
Yeah,
so we just had year one, so we'll see where we go. We didn't meet under a parking garage, so I feel like I've already
that's a shame.
kind of won. Yeah, I know. I miss, right. You're supposed to have hard things for your children so that they grow up having some rough edges and can survive. None of this cushy stuff. Well, the funny thing is, shows are their own topic because the big shows are cool, but also I'm very fond of nice regional shows, and I think that's how I would idealize things, generally speaking. But also, I'm in a box in my own backyard here, so it's like Tucson. It's harder to find a venue that can go really, really big without having to deal with the city or without having to deal with like the places where the venues are large or places I don't want to deal with because I am dealing with a lot of it myself, and dealing with the city is
Oh goodness. Well,
not the easiest.
a lot of people have asked us since I took over. They said, "Oh, John, now you're in charge of this Baltimore show. Are you going to?" There's Baltimore, like any other city on the, major city in the country, has experienced issues one way or the other. And Baltimore has had its share, but Baltimore, is, like I said, it's something that we're all been going for 30 years, let's say, in this venue. And I talked to Lori about this. I said, "What's our temperature on this topic?" And she said, "John, Baltimore is on the major renaissance. I mean, they've announced some incredible things. So every city ebbs and flows, and they just announced about a $10 billion or $6.5 billion renovation to what's called Inner Harbor, which is right where the show is. There's like a main street through the city. Inner Harbor has, it's a little aged at 25 or 30 years old. And so a developer is coming in, he's taking over that whole area. They just sold, the Orioles team just sold, and that was a $1.7 billion sale. And that's literally, another 100 yards in the other direction from the show. So the city itself is, on a renaissance. And Lori says to me, you can't talk to random cities about random coin shows. Say, hey, we want to have a coin show in Phoenix, or we want to have one, in Atlanta. These cities with these large convention centers, as you're alluding to, very difficult to work with. They want you to know you're going to be there for 10 years, and they want to make sure you're going to sell X amount of hotel rooms. And if you're not in that ballpark,
yeah,
you get the worst of their offerings, which is unfortunately it's been happening to A&A, because A&A has this mandate of moving the shows all the time. A world that doesn't have any interest in a moving show, in a moving trade show.
yeah. They don't want one-offs. Yeah, they want something that's more permanent.
And even if it's permanent, like there's some wonderful hotels you might look at and say, "Oh my goodness, I would love to be at the Gaylord Hotel at Washington D.C. National Harbor," which is a beautiful facility that the conventions for, like, the American Medical Association or whatever, and they look at you and they're like, "No, waiting list to get into this place." So you still can't get it, even if you are have good long-term intentions. So we are committed to Baltimore for those reasons, but we also think the mayor came and talked to me at the first show after we took over the company. I mean, they're really committed. So just like in your situation, or opposite, I was lucky enough to walk into it as a situation that had this environment where they said, we really love the Whitman Expo. What can we do? And so that's why we're staying.
Yeah. Well, no, I mean, it makes sense. It's easy for people to say, well, just go find a better place. Like it took me like 3 years to find a venue I liked for a smaller show.
Sure.
I mean, like I don't need 50,000 or 100,000 square feet. I needed 10,000, it's like,
right.
So to find something that is, if the goal, if the footprint's going to be that size, it becomes a lot more difficult of a thing, because you can't just up and move. I don't even know how big the facility is there, but you can't just up and move that without.
Well, it's right. It's a large show, and the other part that you and I would to fate the reality is, for a coin show. Now you can go Comic-Con and go, oh, I want a show that looks like Comic-Con. I want to have events and princesses and dragons and all kinds of fancy things. But that's not what the coin show attendees really want. We're not in a circus environment at a coin show. That creating one is not going to make a better coin show experience, in my opinion. I mean, in Berlin, where it's mostly a trade show where these world mints have large displays and 3D this and so on, and big glass displays of their offerings for this. There's more like a museum showcasing. That's not what works at a traditional American coin show. What works is an 8-foot table with 2 cases spanning and facing forward with your coins for sale, and a no nonsense relationship between the guy behind the table and the person in front of the table. Right? We can't make a circus out of it. We can't invite the entire Boy Scouts of America to our shows, because if we over promote a show, we might get a lot of people. We might get people we don't want in the show on a security level. Right? We have gold coins and gold bars. Come see all this valuable stuff at our show. Well, that's a security issue.
It's a
So it's a whole different problem.
all of these things, have the other side of the coin to it, right? I mean, all of these things, we want people to attend shows, but we want the right people to attend shows. And
Right.
there are lots of realities around the situation. And so, ironically enough, I'm not going for a circus environment, but I am going to be drawing people in, hopefully, that are younger, that will have a different idea about how the world works and the people that are set up at the cases. But the point is, the language is coins. And so if I can teach people the language of coins, it won't matter. And that's kind of
Mhm.
the way I view it long term is,
Right.
and some of these people, they come in and they're going to be rough around the edges at first, but they just, eh, you can't want the coin industry to survive, maintain, and thrive without accepting new people and different people.
That's right.
I don't think so. If your whole idea of, and not you personally, I'm just saying the big you, if the whole idea of the coin market is I only want to replicate myself and get more of me in there, there's only so many of you that are around. There's only so many. You understand what I'm getting at. But anyways, that goes full circle to that broad tent idea that we had earlier about you gotta the changing tides. Some people are not going to accept it. So
I don't have any problem with that. I haven't seen a lot of pushback in that regard. Um, in terms of oh, I won't accept a collector who only wants to buy a set of kookaburras or stack silver, or I don't see that kind of
yeah,
pushback. I think like you said, I think it's a broad tent. I think whoever wants to be here, whoever's interested, whoever's legitimate. I mean, I think that's the criteria I care about. At the PNG or anything else, the whole goal is, with expanding hobby. We do have an expanding hobby. We definitely have more people, new faces, people we've never met in this hobby. How do we know that they're legitimate? How trusted? We're working hard on a YN Young Numismatist program at the PNG called Next Gen, and Next Gen has been really it surprised me how popular it is. So Amanda Bladdle, who works here at Greysheet, is kind of taking like a part-time job, helping the PNG because it needs administration, it needs communication with all these YNs, and you know what? It's a struggle for them. It's a lot of these young people came into the hobby around COVID. There's a bunch of 18 to 25 year olds who are energetic sellers, very smart, very savvy, and of course know this internet marketing in a way that I could dream of. But they've never seen a down market. They've never seen where you buy a coin for 1,000 and it's worth 850 the next day because the market caught up to them, and everything that they were buying during COVID was you buy it for 1,000, flip it for 1,100, flip it for 1,200. Um, all of a sudden, there's some challenges, and so that's who has character, right? Who
yeah.
you know? I don't care if you're 18 or 80. Do you have character? Are your checks good? And if you have a bad month or a bad moment, are you going to call the person whose check is holding your check and say, "I'm going to make good on this. I hit a rough patch."
Yeah.
Uh, so that's a whole different conversation. But that's what's happening in this moving market.
Well, what's fun about the coin market in general is there's so many different things that you can get into, and you're involved in most of them apparently. So, but PNG is its own topic. I think the big takeaway, one of the big takeaways for me, just in general in this type of conversation, is that there's the journey, right? There's you know collectors have a starting point, and the PNG has its own place in the ecosystem and its importance. And so whether it's you're buying folders and filling stuff up, or if you're buying $100,000 coins and bidding on stuff, there's just there's so much out there to cover, and none of us know all of it. So
No,
and I feel, I know that you get the emails, so I understand, you know, that people expect you to know everything. And I'm like, John's a human. I'm a,
Me?
I'm a
Nobody.
human.
People are happy if I know anything.
Well, listen, I think you and I feel the same ways about ourselves and what we do, and I think that's what's fun about it. Um, are there any new products that people should know about? It sounds like they're all new products. You've got all kinds of stuff going on.
You know, like I said, my focus this current moment is figuring out how to best align the two companies and come out with a really great. I think in the next, it's going to take us about 3 to 6 more months before you start seeing this really aggressive pipeline of book, reference books and periodicals that that I've always dreamed about getting, so in other words, Whitman was coming out with, specialty books about, let's say it's bar recorders or Walking Liberty half dollars, but not on a real schedule. So I want to get us on a schedule where somebody like you has someone interested in Franklin halves at their store, and there's a book for that, and
Hmm.
or bar recorders, and I think we should be the home for that kind of a product. We've also got, like I said, we're getting to press so that we have it for A&A, the third cherry picker guide, which is been out of date for too long. So we're going to get on cycle with all of those kinds of products, and then dream up anything we can dream up, and do and have fun with it. So you know the banknote it would be the other exciting project that we're working on. We have this thing called the bank notebook, which is world paper money. It's digital only because it's probably several thousand pages long in print. But now that we have Whitman, I'm like a kid in a candy store, and I'm like, I want that in print. That book needs to be in print. So 3 volume set, like kind of like the old phone books at see with the standard guide to world paper money. It's been gone for 20 years. So as someone who cares about the hobby, how do we got to fill that void, or we can't have new paper money collectors? Is we suffer in the world paper money collecting hobby because of lack of a good book. We have a book, we just have to get it in print, and so
Yeah.
we might just start losing money printing a bunch of books, but at least we'll have fun doing it.
I, it's funny you say that. That was my first coin show experience. I said, I'm laughing because I'm thinking about like everything that I've done that's been successful has been a loss leader.
Right. Well, you don't do what I'm doing if you're like trying to take over the world financially.
Eh,
That's not where I'm headed. I mean, this was,
yeah.
like I said, I'm a venture capitalist, and I'm not that. I'm just too much of I call myself an operator. I just really enjoy seeing the creation of such things, and leaving the masters of the universe to take care of other things. To take
Well, you've carved out quite a niche for just a guy who's just trying to have some fun. So congratulations on that.
Oh, thank you, thank you. I mean, I really appreciate your support and your saying so. I mean, it's just a
Yeah.
regular guy like everybody else.
Same. Yeah, I feel the same way on that stuff. But in people, I think if they've ever met you at a show, they find out just how approachable you are. And when people run into me at shows, same thing. I'm like, I'm just another guy in the industry. Let's have some fun and let's talk coins.
Right, right. So
But
there's very few celebrities in our business, are there? It's not. That's another interesting thing about our business. It's not terribly celebrity driven, which is nice, actually.
it is it's pretty low key in lots of ways, which makes it enjoyable. Well, I'm going to let you get on with your day. I thank you
Okay,
for your time, and we'll cross paths again. I appreciate catching up. Good luck with Whitman and
thanks.
all of the things. That's exciting.
Thanks. And if anybody, I know this from the last time. I'm not the world's greatest social media guy, but I noticed there's people who put comments at the video and so on. And if anybody posts a question and it's a bit cerebral or just worth talking about, we can pop on and do a follow on if we miss some area, whatever subject matter.
Well, maybe I'll take comments from this video, and we'll have another get together just to answer questions from the crowd and
Sure.
and see whether they are sincere or cynical. We'll have some fun either way.
I like it. Bring it, cynical, whatever. Let's address it.
All right, John. Thanks so much for your time. Good to see you. Take care.
Thank you. Appreciate it.